looking for. Whoa, welcome to the whole team. What you're looking for, you can find it here on the whole TV. What you're looking for, what you're looking for, you can find it here on the whole TV. What you're looking for, whoa, welcome to the whole TV.
Well, good morning, good morning, good morning. And this is the day the Lord has made, and we should rejoice and be glad in it. Welcome to Hope TV. I'm Dewey Smith. I am a hope dealer with the Hope TV family, and I am incredibly excited. I really, really am. And so thankful that you've tuned in to another segment of Morning Dew as presented through the Hope TV. It's our aim here to provide you with a daily dose of hope. And I'm just excited that you've chosen to carve out a portion of your Thursday morning to spend with us here at the Hope TV. As a matter of fact, this is the last Thursday in the month of May, and so quickly this year is moving, and we're thankful. We give God praise for it, and I thank God for all of you who've tuned in today. It really means a lot to me. Everybody who's tuned in, whether it be Apple TV, Roku, Twitch, Amazon, Fire TV, if it's Facebook, YouTube, if it's Twitter, if it's IG Live, if it's the edewithsmith.org website, the House of Atlanta website, the House of Hope West Point website, or if you're watching through the Hope TV, welcome. I'm thankful. I really, really am that you've tuned in today. It means a whole lot to me. And if you've tuned in, won't you drop me a line and let me know that you're watching? Give me the city and the state and the country from which you're viewing. We take all that to consideration when we're developing content. We want to know where you're watching from, and I personally try to stay abreast of what's happening in the areas of those who support us, so I can kind of speak to what's going on in your area as well. And because this is a global platform, and so drop us a line. Good morning, Justice. Good to see you. Thanks for being a part. Appreciate you being a part this morning. So thank you for corresponding, Justice, on Facebook. Good to see you. And everybody else who's tuned in today, I thank God for you and I appreciate you. So whether you're watching, and if you're watching through a platform that will allow you to subscribe, to like, to comment, or to share, please consider doing so. Every time you subscribe, you can get notifications as to when new content is uploaded. We have over 30 programs now that we're offering on a weekly basis. Every time you like, those likes help us with our algorithms and our social media engagements. Hit that like button, please. Hit it, hit it, hit it. It helps us tremendously. It helps us to be put in different areas. Good to see you, Tina Williams from Fort Valley. God bless you. So those likes are very, very important for us. So don't take it for granted. Just hit that like button if you can. If you're on Facebook, YouTube, please hit that like button because it's very, very helpful. Also, your comments are important. Good to see you, Duana from North Carolina. God bless you. Happy Thursday to you as well. Your comments are so helpful, especially when we have interactive settings like this. Most helpful. So thank you for those comments. And then your shares are preeminently important. Good to see you, Tom. God bless you. Thanks for tuning in today from Victorville, California. Good to have you here with us. Appreciate your support today. And those shares are very, very important because it helps us to get that daily dose of hope out. So, again, thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you for being a part. Um, as you know, we started this platform back in the month of March. I had this, I call it my meager attempt to stay in touch with the members of our local community. And I just no one had any idea how long we'd be, dealing with the ramifications of the pandemic. But here we are, 14 months later, and this network has really grown, and a lot of great content. We have a good morning, Pamela Benton from Sacramento. God bless you. So we got Victorville, California, and Sacramento this morning. West Coast, God bless you. And it's 6:30 out there, so God bless you. Thanks for being a part today, Pamela and Tom. We appreciate you. Um, and so we've been excited about it. We have conversations about mental health, you know, exercise 6 days a week, finances, tips for business owners. We have a show for senior citizens, senior adults, for youth, for children, for women, for men, for married couples, singles. We have something that deals with comedy, social activism. Just a Friday Night Live. We have a cooking show now, something that we have another one on tea and worship, gospel music buzz. So just a host of, I'm very excited about it. I appreciate it. Samuel Bryce, go Cowboys. Hey, I listen. You need to start praying now for those Cowboys. So I thank you for being a part, and I appreciate you. So if you want to just check out the other programming, just go to thehopetv.com. Good to see you, Teresa from San Antonio. What a blessing to have you with us. I thank God for your vision to create this platform. And nobody but God did it, because I don't know where it came from. And while I may have had the vision, I'm grateful for the team that pulls it off. I shared it with them. How are we going to do this? And I thank God for those 43 people who've been working diligently to kind of undergird this, because without them, it would not be a reality. So thank God for the vision. Thank God for the team that supports it and undergirds it. And thank God for you for tuning in, because it really motivates our team when they see that people, it's almost like cooking a meal and nobody enjoys it, or nobody eats it. It makes a difference when you feel like you are doing something that's helpful. No, we're not back in the building full time yet. We're working on that now. We're going to do it safely and prudently, and our building is going through a major renovation. Our campus is, and we're trying to put some things in place to ensure that it's going to be safe. A new AC unit, all those types of things, and so we're doing surveys now to get some more insight from our members as to when it'd be appropriate time for us to return. So we're not in the building yet. Still trying to prioritize public safety and make sure the building can accommodate people. We have a pretty large sanctuary there, and it's pretty extensive to put new AC units in it and all the different apparatus associated with it. So we'll keep you abreast as when we return back to public worship. Right now, we're doing virtual worship services in our multiplex facility. So we're not even using our cathedral. We haven't used the cathedral since March 8th of last year. So when we stream our worship services, those are services that are recorded in our multiplex building. And so hopefully soon those repairs will be done, but we want to do it safely and prudently. So please keep us in your prayers. All right, let's get into morning dew. We've been talking about the book of Colossians, and we've been on Colossians probably since October, November of last year, going verse by verse. I've just kind of taken my time and going through it methodically. And we went through Philippians prior to that, verse by verse, taking a cursory glance at different passages and trying to summarize them and, extract the meaning of it. And I didn't know what we were going to do after Philippians, but Colossians was almost like a natural segue, really, because when you parallel what was happening in the first century in Colossae relative to where we are now, it was just some some interesting parallels. For instance, in the first century AD, Colossae was experiencing a lot of challenges. That territory was one of the challenges was the economic challenges, an economic challenge. It had once been a blossoming and a solid and a sound economy. Sheep herding and the wool industry was the main economy there in Colossae around the fourth and fifth centuries. But around the first century, it's kind of shifted, and so economically, a lot is just kind of some economic downturn in Colossae. People are not traveling. It's not a highly esteemed place when you look at it vis-a-vis Jerusalem or Rome or even a Philippi or a Galatia or an Ephesus. Nothing was really significant about Colossae, so people didn't visit Colossae. And so it was not a travel destination. Economy was down. And then to make matters worse, you know, false doctrines, the beginning seeds of heresies, one called Gnosticism, 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 which had this overemphasis on esoteric knowledge. And basically, at the crux of Gnosticism was the belief that matter and the atmosphere and the environment was evil. And because the Gnostics overemphasized knowledge and they felt that matter and the atmosphere and the environment was evil, inevitably led them to believe that Jesus Christ could not have come in the flesh. Because the Gnostics taught that if Christ had come in the flesh, then Christ would have been contaminated by all of the evil and the matter that's in the atmosphere. And so they said he could not have come in the flesh. And it was very problematic because to deny Christ's incarnation, to deny that Christ came in the flesh, does several things for us. I mean, it removes the virgin birth. It removes the word becoming flesh to dwell among us. It removes the physical life of Jesus. It removes the miracles. It and even more tragically, if Christ did not come in the flesh, then it puts. I mean, it's a major blow. It basically eliminates Calvary or Christ coming to for atonement to pay the ransom for our sins. So to say that Christ didn't come in the flesh, it takes away Calvary and the crucifixion. So there is no ransom, there is no atonement. If Christ didn't come in the flesh, takes away the blood being shed on the cross. If Christ didn't come in the flesh, it takes away the bodily death. It takes away the resurrection of Jesus Christ. And so if Christ is not crucified, or if Christ is not risen, even St. Paul says in First Corinthians that 15 that if Christ be not risen from the dead, then our faith is in vain. And so that's really the essence of Gnosticism. They didn't understand. They thought they were kind of doing Jesus a favor, I guess, by keeping him pure, but to take away his physical, the incarnation, Christ coming in flesh as us, it removes Christ from Christianity. You're right. You're exactly right, Tom. And so that's what was happening. So you had Gnosticism in one quarter, and then springing out of Colossae and other parts of Asia Minor, you had something called Docetism. That's Docetism. And it was interesting because they both were trying to help Jesus out. So Gnosticism said he did not come in the flesh. Docetism is almost a derivative of Gnosticism, and they both are kind of attached to Oriental mysticisms as well. But Gnosticism says he didn't come in the flesh. Docetism says, well, that was what they saw. They did see something, but what they saw was a ghost. It was a mirage. It was an optical illusion. It was not reality. It was not a literal body. When they saw Jesus, it was just a theophanous epiphany. You know, it was just the appearance of a physical body, but it was not a physical body. So Docetists tried to suggest, well, they did see something. He did come, but it was just a ghost. The challenge with Docetism as well is to suggest that Christ was a ghost and didn't come in a physical body also takes away Christ from Christianity, Tom. It also takes away blood being shed. It also takes away the virgin birth, the miracles, because now we don't have somebody who came like us. You know, that Christ came in the flesh, took upon him the form of flesh. John 1:14 says, and the word became flesh and dwelt among us. Well, the Gnostics and the Docetists would say, well, no, he didn't come in the flesh. Gnostics said he didn't come at all. Docetists said something did come, but it was just a ghost, a mirage, or an optical illusion. And then you had something else that also crept out of that kind of movement. It was called Cerinthianism. So you had Gnosticism, who said Christ didn't come in the flesh at all, Docetism says, yeah, he did come, but it was just an epiphany or an appearance or mirage. Then Cerinthianism, that's Cerinth, uh, Thiniasm, Cerinthianism. Cerinthianism that came from the heritage of Cerinthus, and Cerinthus is Cerinth, Cerinthus, Cerent. YouTube, Cerinthus, Cerinthus, Thus, Cerinthus, the heritage of Cerinthus, Cerenthus, Cerinthus. I don't know what that is right now. I don't know what somebody's put on our page, but anyway, Cerinthus. Please don't do that while we. So Cerinthus taught. Cerinthianism espoused that Christ did come, um, and but when Christ was born, he was not born as divine. Cerinthianism says that when Christ came on as a human, but then when he was baptized, a sense of divinity came on him at his baptism, and that he was only divine when he was 30 years of age, his baptism, that God came upon him. Divinity blended with his humanity when he was baptized. But then it says, but that divinity left him on Calvary. So he was not divine the whole time, only had a few years of divinity, that he was not born divine and human. He was human, only became divine at his baptism, and then that divinity left him uh, when he was on the cross. So that was Corinthianism. So all of these kinds of these these teachings kind of crept out of um, Colossae and other territories like it. And one of the things I think is very interesting, and just as a side, I think there's a psychological pathology sometimes, and an emotional pathology, that a lot of times when we are desperate, when it's been said that desperate desperate, measures calls for desperate actions. I also want to suggest that sometimes when people are desperate and broken, we go looking for answers. And I think that's what happens. A lot of times people join all kinds of interesting teachings. I don't like to call them cults, but some things are. Sometimes when people are searching for something, sometimes brokenness and a sense of lack and being unfulfilled can cause people to want to make sense out of it. And if what they've been taught of faith doesn't make sense, we try to make sense in other places. So sometimes you go looking for things. So I think that was really happening in Colossae, because the area was broken economically, socially was not favored, a downward trajectory on a downward spiral. I think people are just trying to make sense of life. And sometimes when you're trying to make sense of life when things aren't unfavorable, you just start pulling stuff out of the hand, whatever feels good or whatever satiates or quenches that thirst is sometimes what we will look for. And so we have to be careful when we're vulnerable like that, when we're broken, because sometimes it can cause you to latch on to things that may not be most helpful for you. And so that was happening in Colossae. So we've talked about that, and Paul trying to Colossians talked about Christ, in him dwelt the fullness of the Godhead bodily, and we're complete in him. That happened in Colossians. That was Paul trying to refute Gnosticism. Yeah, he says, in Christ dwelleth the fullness of the Godhead bodily. That was a total refutation of Gnosticism, of Docetism, and Cerinthianism. When he says that in Colossians 2:9, that in him dwelleth the fullness of the Godhead bodily, and we are complete in him. Again, that was Paul trying to clarify these heretical teachings that had crept up in Colossae. And so he's talked about different things, and trying to make sure we understood that. So he deals with the incarnation. But we've been talking the last couple of days, and I missed 2 episodes. We've been preaching and teaching places, and I apologize. But this past the last verses of the chapter of the book, really, we've been talking about relationships that matter. And I want to kind of I should be finished with this on Tuesday. I was supposed to finish it today, but we'll definitely finish it by Tuesday if I don't finish today. Um, Paul kind of closes the whole missive by giving us a list of names, and we've gone through those names. I hope some of you have been with us. Those who've not, please go back and try to listen to the last few weeks of Morning Dew, because I won't have time to go through them all today. But I want to touch a couple things for you today. I want to kind of just run back through it because he closes talking about relationships. Good morning, Ron Lester. God bless you, sir. And he basically talks about relationships that matter. And when we go back to verse 7 through, we started with verse number 7, it was when Paul begins to mention these relationships. And from verse 7 to the conclusion of the chapter, he mentions names. And I think what gets me is I love hearing about these names that they're unheralded, they're unsung heroes. And I like to talk about them because we talk about all of the other major biblical characters, and we should. But these others who are included that we don't hear much about, I think it's important that we kind of dissect them and research them as well. And so I kind of gave you an outline about the different types of relationships. I think one we call resourceful relationship with Tychicus. We talked about him, his service. We talked about Onesimus. Um, we talked about Aristarchus. Um, we talked about Mark. Some of you remember I talked about little Mark. That was a reconciled relationship. So we had a resourceful relationship. We had a relevant relationship. Yes, there you go. Yeah, we had a relevant relationship. That was the one with Tychicus. We talked about him. We talked about a reconciled relationship. That was with Onesimus. We talked about him, and we dealt with the book of Philemon, or some call it Philemon, and what that was about. We talked about real relationships. That was the one with Aristarchus. And we kind of dissected his life and pulled some of the nuances of Aristarchus, his relationship with St. Paul. We talked about resourceful relationships. Um, we talked about that with St. Mark, and how that relationship really, you really could call it a reconciled one too, but I want to just have some deviation from them, from Onesimus versus Mark, because they're kind of two different kinds of contexts. But Mark being resourceful for him. We talked about rooted relationships. That was the one with Epaphroditus, and how Epaphroditus had been with Paul on multiple occasions, and we kind of went through the life of Epaphroditus. And then the last time we talked about ruined relationships, and the ruined. Good morning, Alicia. And the ruined relationship was the one he had with Demas. I think that's the last one we picked up on, Demas. And we kind of talked about it. It was kind of sad, really, because Demas had once been very important to the ministry of Paul and had been commended in other passages, and we dealt with that the last time, and it was just, and to me it's just sad when that happens, when you see relationships alter and shift. And Demas, according to First Timothy chapter 4 verse 10 and 11, Demas really, at the end of Paul's life, good morning, Ronald, at the end of Paul's life, Demas went another direction. And so Paul dies as an old man, really disconnected from Demas. And you can tell by just the tone of his writing that he was really hurt by it. And it's hurtful for me to read it. Um, that because Paul knows he's about to die in Second Timothy. As a matter of fact, he says in Second Timothy 4 and 6, "For I'm now ready to be offered, and the time of my departure is at hand." Then he says in verse 7 of Second Timothy 4, "I have fought a good fight. I finished my course. I've kept the faith." Verse 8 of Second Timothy 4, he says, "Henceforth there's laid up for me a crown of righteousness with the Lord, which the Lord, the righteous judge, shall give me at that day. and not to me only, but unto all them that love is appearing. So Paul knows that his death is imminent. He knows that his life is laying in full tilt. He said, I'm ready to die. I know that in a few days, in a few moments, I'm going to be beheaded. They're going to take my life. And so he's trying to give his one song to Timothy and let him know and encourage him. And he moves from talking about the imminence of death and the acceptance of his own mortality. And then he tells us, my friend Demas has forsaken me. That he loved this present world. And it's just tough. Good morning, Greta. It's tough. I hate reading that passage because you can just hear the tone. He's forsaken me. And unfortunately, even though relationships, I believe, are the currency of the kingdom, the reality is that sometimes everybody who started with you in the beginning won't go with you until the end. That's one of the inevitabilities of life and the inevitabilities of faith. And it's tough. It's tough when relationships don't work. It's tough when you start out with someone that you love and something shifts and something alters, and what was won't be that going into the future. And we have to be very, very careful and very knowledgeable, because if you're not, that kind of pain of betrayal and disloyalty, it can paralyze you really. It can be immobilizing because you're left with so many questions. What did I do? What happened? And if you're not careful, you can focus more on who forsook you than actually being faithful to the finish and faithful to your fight. And I've been there at moments in my life, and sometimes it's even. But what I will say, at least I don't think we have no evidence that Paul and Demas ever reconciled. I would have hoped they could have. We have no record of that. I've never researched anywhere where Paul and Demas came back before Paul died. It was a moment of reconciliation and forgiveness. But what I will say about this is that I do think it's helpful. I don't know if we have that Second Timothy 4:10 passage. What I do like about it, though, however, is that's it. That's the one I want. He says, "For Demas hath forsaken me, having loved this present world, and is departed into Thessalonica, Crescens to Galatia, Titus unto Dalmatia." He says he left the present world and he went back to Thessalonica. Now, it's tough and it's difficult. And listen, and every time I read that, it does something to me. Every time I read it, it's painful to read that for me. It's like, man, because this guy's an old man. He's getting ready to die. He knows my time. I fought a good fight. I'm finished my course. I'm ready to be offered. My departure's at hand. I'm about to leave you guys. And he shifts. He can't even focus on his departure without talking about Demas. It is as if he really can't even die in peace. He's still, at the moment of death, that's the time when you think all the loose ends and all the bad blood and the issues could be resolved. He can't even focus solely with exclusivity on his departure because Demas is in his thoughts. But what I will say about this is, although there is no proof of reconciliation, and it's painful to read this, what I will say about this is at least Paul did have an understanding of what happened. And that's the blessing in it. Paul knew that Demas had fallen in love with the present world. The riches, the money, maybe the lasciviousness. I don't know what it was, the loose living. But Paul at least knew what was happening with Demas. And I think and maybe that was God's way of allowing him to leave in peace. And maybe he puts that out there about Demas. Maybe he uses, and another thing I think perhaps, maybe Paul put his name out and where he was going. So when he left, maybe he's hoping that someone would take up the responsibility. That's what I didn't talk about last time. He's heard about it, but I think he mentions Demas because his hope and his expectation are probably that when somebody reads this missive, that somebody then will go and find Demas and get some repentance to not give up on him. It's the same way I didn't give up on Mark. I don't want you guys when I'm going to give up on Demas. But the other thing, which says that even in his death, perhaps he was trying to give some hope. I want y'all to go and find it. When I'm gone, I won't be able to talk to him anymore. But he's gone to Thessalonica. Can you guys go and find him? So Paul still could be compassionate before he faces his own crucifixion. Maybe he's still showing affection. You know, he still wants Demas to be blessed. Perhaps that's why he mentions where he was, and gives the situation, because he wants somebody else to take the onus to go and find him. But what did bless me was that Paul did not die dealing with Demas without knowing what happened. At least he had some justification and some understanding what was going on with Demas. And I think that may have allowed him to leave. This is my conjecture, me, based upon our research, and just to think about where he is and to think about death and dying. What's more tragic is to somebody just to leave and you have no explanation what happened. It's false face on earth, no conversation. You don't know if you did something, if something was said. I think that Paul, even knowing what was going on with Demas, may have been something that allowed Paul to not take it personally. That Demas didn't forsake Paul because of something that Paul had done. That Demas decided to forsake the faith because he fell in love with what the world was offering. That may have brought peace to Paul's emotions as well. That it was not an issue between him and Demas, but Demas just got caught up in the world. And maybe that was a blessing for God. Maybe that was a blessing from God to let Paul know, Paul, Demas leaving, Demas turning his back has nothing to do with you. So, and I think that's a good lesson for us, because sometimes we take responsibility for stuff we shouldn't take responsibility for. Yeah, particularly in relationships. Um, if you and I are not careful, we can take the burden of others' actions and then look at ourselves like, okay, what did I do? It brings about feelings of inadequacy and feelings of insecurity and low self-esteem, and you feel like you're not good enough. Did I do something wrong? And sometimes I think we take the responsibility, we take the burden of their actions. And I just believe that even in that statement, that even though it was a ruined relationship, um, it was not ruined because of a fight between them. Um, he understood. It was nothing that he had done. And I think that sometimes that's a good lesson for us. Some people leave your life. I've had loved ones that battle drugs, and no matter what you say, what you do, that it has nothing to do with you. And all you can do is pray and put them in the hands of God. And I believe that's what Paul was doing, even in that hurtful moment. And yet, but what I love about that is he still continues to, even in his brokenness, he still continues to write and talk and move. He's hurt by it, but he's still able to commend others and continue. And I think this is a powerful lesson for many of us today, that when life comes and when it's difficult, we got to keep it moving. Okay, we got to keep it moving. We got to know how to keep it moving. So those are other passages about Demas, the ruined relationships. All right. Yeah, you got to put it in the hands of God. And I believe that's what Paul, I really sincerely believe when Paul was saying what happened with Demas and where he was and where he'd gone, he's saying, and that's another beautiful thing. He's still aware where Demas is. He's still keeping tabs on him. Even though Demas has turned his back, I believe Paul still has hope for him. And I just want to believe in my heart of hearts that before Demas closed his eyes, he got it right. He got off track, but I believe that Paul accepted what, that's good, Tina. He accepted what he could do. And I think there's another good thing too. Like for instance, with Mark, I think, Mark turned his back and left. Demas forsook him. Mark went back when they were in Pamphylia on the first missionary journey. And I believe Paul may have looked at his life and said, well, you know what, maybe I should give Mark another chance. So that's why he says, go get little Mark, and bring him back. He's profitable. I know he messed up the first time. Maybe Paul is older now with Demas. Maybe he wasn't as patient as he could have been with Mark earlier. That was his first missionary journey. Maybe he was on fire and full of zeal. Maybe we see some maturity here with Paul, with Demas. Because Paul is saying, the same way God brought Mark back to me, Maybe if I put this word out there, I won't live to see it, but maybe I'm planting some seeds so Demas also can be brought back. And that's a good way and I think in that regard, Paul didn't die a bitter man. He didn't let the hurt that Demas caused him, because obviously he's hurt by Demas returning his back, but he does not allow that to cause him to become bitter. I believe he still wants Demas to be blessed and delivered, even at death. Even when he needed Demas, I still believe that he wanted Demas to have a reconciliation with God and with faith. All right, now let me go to that one last relationship. This is the revelatory. If you put all seven back up there again, this was the one I didn't deal with last time. Can you put the outline back up? So we had all of them. We had the relevant, reconciled, real, resourceful, rooted, ruined, and this is the one I did not deal with: the revelatory. Revelatory. Let's go to the revelatory one. The revelatory relationship. Um, and this is in Colossians 4 and 14. Are you ready? I want you to read this one. One more name I want to give you. Colossians 4 and 14. Can you put that scripture up there for me, please? This is what it says. He says, I really want 15, I think. Yeah, I didn't give it to you. Let me read this one because I really want the next one. Colossians 4 and it's really 4 and 15. I'm sorry. 4 and 15. Can you find 15? So he deals with Luke. We dealt with Luke. That was the rooted relationship. That's Luke had been with him the whole time. I think that Luke had been with him, on his missionary journeys. I think, yeah, Luke, that was the rooted one. Demas is the ruined one. But then there's a revelatory one. This is Colossians 4 and 15. And I didn't put that in my notes. I don't think. Producer, can you find that for me? 4 and 15. 4 and 15. And when you find Colossians 4 and 15, that's the revelatory one I want to mention. And thank you, Tina, for putting that down. Listen what it says. He says, salute the brethren which are in Laodicea and Nymphos and the church which was in his house. Salute the brethren which are in Laodicea and Nymphos, and the church that meets in his house. Now, let me tell you why that's very interesting. That's a very interesting verse. That's a very interesting verse. And it's revelatory. What do you mean by revelatory? There is an interpretive challenge with this verse that affects the meaning significantly, and it's so revelatory. That's why I want to take my time and dissect this. The first time we get the scriptures translated from the original Hebrew and Greek languages into English is in 1611. That's the first authorized translation. Remember, the Old Testament was written in Hebrew. New Testament was originally written in Greek. The scriptures were translated from Hebrew and Greek into English in 1611. Okay. And the King of England, his name was King James. King James is the one who authorized the scriptures being translated from Hebrew and Greek to English. Now that's a whole nother problem, because some people say, critics of the Bible say, King James is the wicked man. He wrote the Bible. No, 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 no. That's one of the things you see a lot of guys in the barbershops and critics. King James wrote the Bible. No, King James didn't write the Bible. King James did not write the Bible. King James is the one who authorized the scribes and the scholars to translate it from Hebrew and Greek into English. Now, we did have some other English versions prior to that, but none were translated from the original Hebrew and Greek into English, and that happened in 1611. So many of you who read the King James version of the Bible, that was the first translation that came straight from Hebrew and Greek into English. Okay, in 1611. But it was not written by, was King James a wicked man? Yes. Did King James do a lot of evil stuff? Yes. So why is the Bible why is it called the King James Version? only because he authorized the translations, not because he wrote it. It was not his book. So a wicked man didn't write the Bible. He only authorized the translation. That's number one. But when you interpret, but although the King James is the first translation from Hebrew and Greek into English, it's not necessarily the best in terms of scholastic. It's not necessarily the better one in terms of some of the language. Whenever you translate from one language to the next, there's some language issues, and you don't see it all the time. But there are some times when the King James is not sufficient in terms of the language. That's why you got to study the original Hebrew and Greek. And this is one said time when an interpretation or a translation challenge, and it's right here with this verse. I want to show it to you. Look what it says again. Salute the brethren which are in Laodicea and Nymphos, and the church which is in his house. And Nymphos, and the church which is in his house. And Nymphos, and the church which is in his house. Nymphos, Ymphas, and the church which was in his house. Let me show you the challenge here. Now, producer, I don't know if you got this, but I want you to find the NIV translation, the New International Version translation. Are y'all with me? Okay, that's okay. That's okay, Teresa. You can ask anything, and if I don't have the answers, I try to get it. And if I don't know it, I tell you I don't know it. But I do try to study. You can always ask questions. You never be embarrassed to ask questions. The only dumb question is the one that's not asked. You can always ask questions. So, but thanks for being a part. I need you to find the NIV, please, to that same verse, producer. I'm sorry I'm doing this to you like this, but I got to do it. I didn't put it in my notes, and I didn't think about it until afterwards. Y'all, please pray for our producer right now, because I think they might be using some language that toward me that probably is not godly. Okay, thank you so much. Now, I want y'all to watch this. Now, I need y'all to stay with me right quickly. Please stay. The NIV is a better translation for the difficult. It's a more accurate translation of the difficult text. So the NIV is better for understanding the language and the difficult translations. King James was the first. But note, I want to see if y'all notice the difference here. This is what the NIV, and that's the NIV stands for New International Version. But listen how the NIV translates it, which is a better translation in terms of academic and scholarship, because they found the problems, the interpretive challenges sometimes with King James. But notice what it says in the NIV. Give my greetings to the brothers and sisters at Laodicea, and to Nympha and the church in her house. I'm gonna see if y'all paying attention to that. Put the King James back up there again, because I know y'all missed it. Now y'all should those who've been with should have caught this by now. Put the King James up for a second. I want to go back and forth just for a second. I'm just gonna read and see if y'all catch this. The King James, same verse. Put the KJV. Put the first one back up there. I know you, and we're gonna go back and forth for a moment, producer. So I know I'm sorry for doing you like this. Put the King James. Look at you, Tina. Okay, Tina. Can you put the KJV back up there? I know it takes a while for them to go back. Look what it says in the King James. Salute the brethren which are in Laodicea and Nymphos and the church which is in his house. King James says, salute the brethren which are in Laodicea and Nymphos and the church which is in his house. NIV, let me go back to the NIV. I just told you I was going to do that, so you shouldn't be cussing now, producer. NIV, go back to the NIV for a second. Give my greetings to the brothers and sisters at Laodicea and to Nympha and the church in her house. We got a challenge, y'all. Here's one of the times when there is a challenge in the interpretation. And those who study foreign languages, you know this, it's all about one letter can throw it off. In French, if you put an E on the back of something, it changes it. The E changes it from masculine to feminine. You got You got masculine, you got feminine, you got neuter. Okay? So here's the problem with this. King James places an S on nympha. Can you go back to King James for a second? King James places an S on nymphas. Can you go back to that for a second? All right, the English does. The English, when they translate it, they put the S on King James for a second, please. The KJV. You got it, Teresa, you got it. So you see the King James. So when the King James translated from Hebrew, from Greek, okay, because remember, New Testament is written in Greek. So when they translated from Greek to English, they inserted the S. Right? The S makes it masculine. The S on nymphas changes the meaning to masculine. Okay. Well, here's the question. Who was translating it? No women were in that translation room. So when it was translated, the translator, y'all listen, thank God, God bless you. God bless you. God bless you, Bernie. So when they added the S to it, it made the whole context masculine. That was not in the original manuscript. It changed the meaning. The other thing I think and here's the thing. So but without the S, it can be neuter. It can be neuter. It's more likely to be feminine, but it can be neuter. But the S makes it exclusively masculine. Here's the other thing that's interesting here. He says, salute the brethren. I'm going to give you, it's three different things. Salute the brethren, masculine, which are in Laodicea, and to nymphas, masculine, and the church was in his house. So in those three references there, the pronoun, nymphas, brethren, all masculine. All right? But now let me go back to NIV for a second. Go back to NIV for a second. Now check this out. Give the greetings to my brothers and sisters. Go back to the KJ for a second. Go back to KJ. Go back to King James for a second. I know they cussing me out. I love you. I love y'all so much. Keep cussing. I love you. Go back to King James. Producer, go back. Salute the brethren which are in Laodicea. You see that? Salute the brethren which are in Laodicea. Go back to the NIV for a second. Go back to the NIV for a second. Give my greetings to the brothers and sisters at Laodicea. Do y'all see the difference? So even with the word brethren in Greek, depending on the translation, it can be neuter, like the word pater in Greek for father. You know, it can be parent. You know, so there are different ways that it can be interpreted based on the language, and one letter can throw it off. That's in Hebrew and Greek. So, because remember, Hebrew has no vowel. So it's all so the translation is very, very important. The NIV, and every scholar would tell you this. The NIV does a better job with the difficult interpreted challenges. So NIV is a more scholarly interpretation. Then you have one new revised standard. So the NIV is a better translation when it's a difficult text. You got me? And the NIV doesn't lead it exclusively to brethren. It doesn't say just greet the brethren. NIV says, I want you to make sure you talk to the brothers and the sisters at Laodicea. And then you also see, and to nympha. The NIV drops the S. Go back to the KJ. Go back to the King James for a second. Y'all, please. I know y'all think I'm stupid and I'm a nerd. I am a nerd. But this is how my mind is. I have to dissect it. So you will see the King James, there is an S on Memphis that was not there in the original. That's what the implication is. Okay? Um, that's added by the redactor or the translator. But when you go to NIV, go to NIV for a second, you see in NIV it says, and to Nympha and to the church in her house. Y'all see that? So there is a bit of discussion right now. When you study this, people try to say, well, we're not sure if it's a man or it's a woman. We don't know. We don't know if Nympha was a man or a woman. Um, if you just, I'm sure if you probably just Googled it, you probably see that everybody would tell you, well, it was a man, possibly a woman. They're making that suggestion because of the differences between the King James and the Message Bible. I think calls it her. Can you put the message up there? I can go on and on. Most of the more modern academic translations gonna call it her. Um, the older ones gonna refer to him as him. Are y'all with me? Am I doing okay? Are y'all with me? Um, and so the better translations, um, the better translations, um, Revised Standard Version, Revised Standard Version calls it her. Um, the New Revised Standard Version calls it her, that which is one they use in a lot of seminaries now. Um, so yeah, New Revised Standard, um, her house, Message Bible, her house. Um, so what do you what am I saying here? Um, what I don't want you to do is think that the scriptures aren't accurate. Because a lot of times, when I was in seminary, some of my old guys like you, people don't even know all that. Don't tell people. I think that's the problem. I think people should be taught the truth. And there are some interpretive challenges when it comes from. That's why you hear me say something like the Greek says this. The Greek language says, why do I do that? And that's not just trying to show off. It's trying to show you that when you translate from one language to the next, there are differences in meanings. And sometimes the best English word for this might not convey, like we say, I love you in English. Well, that's four different words for love in Greek. So, so the challenge is that's why we have to know the languages and do our research because there are some challenges with some of the interpretations. And and I like to make you aware of this because critics of the Bible will try to point out the flaw. It's a document. That's why we have to read the original one. And when there's a challenge, point the challenge so we can understand it. And that's why I think it's also a good practice to kind of read. Like whenever I preach a passage, I try to read 7 different translations every time. I don't read just one translation. I read 7 different ones, and I also look in the original. I studied Hebrew. I've been studying Greek since I was 16. I was 17 years old. I can read the Greek New Testament like I'm reading, like I'm reading a comic book. So I've studied Greek, coordinated Greek since I was 16 years old because I wanted to understand. Hebrew, I don't really like Hebrew. I can go. It's different. It's totally hard. I like Greek New Testament. I'm a New Testament guy, but I can read Hebrew. I took Hebrew, but you have to understand that because sometimes I want people to know. I want people to know. And if there's a challenge with that passage, I want you to be aware of it. And this is one of the challenges. And I think we're mature enough. And it does not mean the Bible is not the Word of God. It just means that we have to go deeper to really what is it? What is he really saying right here? And so, are y'all with me? I hope y'all can handle it. Are y'all with me? Um, and so, most modern scholastic translations don't refer to nymphos as him, nympha as her. I gotta let y'all go because I'm over my time. But I think that's revelatory for me. That's a revelatory relationship. It's a revolutionary relationship. Put that scripture back up there. Put the NIV back up there. I'm gonna let y'all go. Y'all give me 2 minutes. I'm gonna let y'all go because I'm supposed to be done in 30 minutes. I've been talking too long. This is in the first century world, at a time that was dominated by patriarchy, misogyny. This same Paul, who some of his writings seems to, you think he said, with woman, you got a question about spiritual thing, ask your husband at home. The implication was that sometimes women were excluded. Some of Paul's writings, sometimes if you take it out of the culture, you think it's restrictive. But when you study this language here, Paul is acknowledging in the original that I got brothers and sisters at Laodicea. Don't just leave the sisters out. It's unfortunate that many churches now make it about the brothers and not the sisters. In this aspect, too many got a KJV mentality rather than NIV mentality. Paul is inclusive here. That's revelatory. That's really what I should have called. It's revolutionary. People that normally were not included, Paul includes them. That says to me sometimes that you have some relationships that may be mind blowing. Some of the same folks that you might never thought would be the ones that bless you. God will put people in your life that's going to be revolutionary. It's going to be a relationship that helps you grow, and you came out of nowhere like, this is radical. This is revolution. This person is a revelatory piece because sometimes help comes from people that you might not even know. Sometimes the people you think will help you won't be the ones that help you. Okay? We should read the word 5 says that and study to show yourself approved. So he says, give my greeting to the brothers and sisters at Laodicea. I was supposed to talk about Laodicea today too. I'm not going to be able to. I talk about it Tuesday. And to Nympha and the church in her house. I got to close here, but let me tell you what blessed me. When they couldn't find a place to meet in Laodicea for church because they didn't have a temple or synagogue, they met at Nympha's house. Yeah. Nympha had a house big enough for the saints in Laodicea together. Now, was Nympha married? Don't know. I don't believe she was. Why you say that? Because if she was, they would have said they'd put her husband's name. Or maybe she was the believer and her husband was an unbeliever. So since she was the believer in Laodicea, they put her name. Either way it goes, Nympha is a bad sister. In the first century world, Nympha had a crib big enough so the saints can come and say, since we don't have a synagogue or a church, no problem, y'all come over here. Meet for me. I have brunch for y'all. What you want? Kosher sausage? God used a woman in Laodicea to house the saints of God. When they couldn't get to public worship in a synagogue or a temple. So this ain't the first time church has been in house. I know some of y'all ready to get back to worship. I am too. In some regards, I am too. But this season has been a blessing for me, for our ministry. Even in the craziness, it's been a blessing. Ain't nothing wrong with having church in your house if you can't get to the temple. Ask Nympha. But a woman in the first century. So even though scholars try to say, well, we don't know if it was a man or woman, I believe it was a woman. And that's why I call it revolutionary. Because a woman in the first century, when women were seen as second-class citizens, provided the platform and the space for saints to get taught the word of God. Before the women's suffrage movement, before Susan B. Anthony, before Ida B. Wells, before Dorothy Height, before Ella Baker and Fannie Lou Hamer, women. Before Kamala Harris, women. Before Geraldine Ferraro ran for vice president, women. God used a woman and her home so the church have a meeting place. Not a husband, not a granddaddy, not a daddy, a woman is mentioned. Sometimes God will use the most unlikely people to bless you. Stop making God fit your box to think your blessing got to come this way. God is able to use your blessing. It's about the heart of a thing. That's radical and revolutionary. That's good to be well to your story. I believe it was a woman, Nympha, and the church was in her house. And I think the inclusion there is beautiful. That's what Pentecost is all about. Joel quoted it. Joel said it, and then Peter quoted on Pentecost. God said, I pour out my spirit on all flesh. All flesh. He says, and when I pour my spirit out on all flesh, this is what he said, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy. Your sons and your daughters. That's gender. He said, your old men shall dream dreams. That's seasoned saints. Your young men shall see visions. That's the that's the millennials, young demographic. So Pentecost is not about exclusion. Whether it's about gender inclusion, Pentecost fights against ageism. Pentecost, all those different people there from 15 different provinces heard the gospel in their own native tongue. Pentecost is not about drawing lines; it's about making circles. And what I love about Nympha, at a time when women were poorly regarded, many times seen as property and second-class citizenship, that God allows Paul to break through the pages of misogyny and patriarchy and say, if it wasn't for this woman Nympha in Laodicea, there wouldn't have been a church in Laodicea. Thank God for that relationship. It's revolutionary, it's radical, revolutionary, and it's revelatory. The revelation for you is when things aren't in order, God may bless you when it don't make sense. This don't make sense. This is out of order. This is not where it's supposed to be. Yeah, this is not the normal order of things. How a woman, she's supposed to be quiet. How a woman. Many of us get so caught up in the order, and sometimes the order is Western and whatever. We get so caught up in the order of things. God can bless you out of order. God don't need this little box to get a blessing to you. Don't miss your blessing because you kind of keep God in the box. God may have a Nympha who could be the biggest resource in your life, but because it won't look like you were expecting it, you miss your blessing. Don't miss your blessing because you're looking for nymphos, and God may be sending it through Nympha. I'll say it again. Don't miss your blessing because you're looking for nymphos, and God may send your blessing through Nympha. But because Nympha does not look like what you expected, you're not open to receive it. I close with the words of the old folks. Anyway, you bless me, I'll be satisfied. Your order may not be his order. What you think, maybe the way the blessing's coming, God may have a total different way. You on AM, God's on FM. You jump to FM, God may jump to satellite. Don't miss your blessing looking for nymphos when God may have it through Nympha. I'm out of time now. But as always, remember this. If you'll be good to God, God will be good to you. Until we meet again, peace.